Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Totally Awesome, Try Something New and Talk About It Tuesday. So if this is your first time listening, I'm a hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, Reiki master, and a life coach. But I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love helping people through adversity and obstacles to find their path, purpose, and peace. So what I tried this week was kind of more out of necessity than anything else. I was having some plumbing problems. And so what I tried was mixing vinegar and baking soda together in equal parts to try to unclog my backed up drains. It was actually both of my bathrooms and my showers that the drains were backing up. And I first discovered it on Saturday night, actually, when I washed a couple loads of clothes, which, you know, is on the other side of the house, and then went into the bathroom and it was backed up. So I tried that, and I didn't want to call a plumber on the weekend. So I, tried everything I could think of, and it didn't work. And I'm not going to say that won't work, because when I did call the plumber on Monday and they came out and, tried to figure out what was going on, it turns out that I have tree roots blocking the drain. And so, the baking soda and vinegar wasn't going to do anything for that. But, I thought it was a good thing to know if your drain is backed up and it's just one of those ordinary problems like, too much toilet paper or something. The baking soda and vinegar in equal parts will probably help with that. So we have a great show planned for today. My guest is Brett Dupree. And Brett is an author, a speaker, a life coach, and a podcast host. And he likes to be very spontaneous. He got into everything that he does basically because he reached a place where he was stuck and fearful. So we're going to talk to him about that and, his journey, his mission, what he's doing with all the different things that he does. So, hi, Brett. How are you?
Hey, Kate. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Okay, well, I'm going to get right into the questions because I have quite a few. And my first one is, can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought you to your current path?
Yeah, I'm Brett Dupree. I like to call myself the Joyous Expansion Life Coach, Champion of Authentic Joy for the Church of Awesome, Champion of Authentic Joy, and Catalyst of Transformation for the Church of Awesome. I think the more names, the better. I'm obviously
okay. Well, you couldn't have gotten that any longer, I don't think.
But basically, my path actually started when I was 26. I spent most of my life as somebody who was afraid all the time. When I think back, one of my biggest fears in life was people thinking about me in any way whatsoever. I remember just almost having a panic attack on the idea of blowing my nose and having a tissue paper on my desk. And it's like, which is more embarrassing? Leaving the dirty tissue on my desk or getting up and throwing it in the trash? And I used to have a joke in one of my speeches on like almost having a panic attack of someone waving and not knowing if the wave is for me, because it's embarrassing if I'm like, oh, hi, and it's not for me. But if it's also not for me, what am I doing? But at the age of 26, for some reason, something clicked in my head of I'm closer to 30 than I am 20, and I wanted to change my life. So that was a time I decided to focus on myself and create change. And my book, my podcast, all the other things I've done has been on the process of creating and changing myself and hopefully helping people along the way.
Great. So in your, I don't know what I should call it, in your work life, your other work, you do software development, or?
I'm a software tester.
Oh, tester. Okay. I thought it was something to do with software. I actually worked in that industry for a while. And way before that, I went back to school for programming. And what I discovered was that I definitely was not a programmer. I could do it. I could do the work, but I wasn't like those guys. I didn't like to go, like in a room and just do programming and throw pizza crusts out. It was like I would figure out a program and it's okay, now what can I do now that's not programming? So, but what I did do was I could talk to those guys because I had the experience of doing it. So I went into sales. And the problem that you're talking about, that was pretty prevalent within the software and engineering and development industry. A lot of.
That's one of the reasons why I got my computer science degree, because I thought, number one, it was so. At the time, it was I graduated in 1996, so computers were, oh, you graduated, here's a job. Oh, I don't have to interview? Awesome, I'm going to be a software tester. And you don't have to really talk to people, because that was the stereotype at the time, is being stuck in a cubicle and just typing code all day. And that sounded like the perfect thing for me, because the last thing I wanted to do was talk with people. Even though that is changing a lot in the industry with the new agile philosophy, has a lot more communication, and communication is actually more important now in the tech industry, in good places to work, than ever. The idea of a dev just stuck all day coding is kind of going away for the most part, unless that still does exist, but communication is still important in tech now. And that's one thing that helped me get my current job with is in a healthcare company, is the fact that I started to blossom and be able to talk to people and go into being.
And also women entering the industry, because we can't not talk. So
I think that depends on the woman. I mean, I think a lot of times we stereotype ourselves, but I've known a lot of women who do not like talking. And I've known a lot of men who just won't shut up.
Talking, yes. But in general, people attracted to that industry in the past had a lot of the same reasons as you.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's been a struggle a lot, because I'm a software tester. My job is to communicate, and not only communicate, it's also a way to communicate you did something wrong. And in the personal development work that I've done, being able to come at that in as a kind way has been extremely helpful, because just like anyone, you create something, That's part of you. People's code is part of them. And to be able to come at it positively and just like, I'm here to help you create the best code possible so that when it goes out into the real world, people don't find that bug and you feel bad. My job is to serve you, and being able to come from that spot. Because like when I first started, of course, like I had the job before I was 26, there was a lot of like fear, and especially there was that divide between developers and testers. But even so like even my personal development work of what I've created has helped me a lot in my personal relationship as a software tester.
Yeah. So what, with the background and thoughts that you used to have, what got you interested in personal development and finally coaching?
Well, to be honest, the same thing that gets men interested in almost anything in the world, I wanted to get women. That was what I wanted to do. I was so shy, especially with women. I, at the time, blamed my mom for it because I felt abandoned by her, so I can't talk to women. And so the first thing I actually did was, there's a secret world of pickup artists, and I actually just scoured the internet on everything it is to pick up on women. And they had this thing called, it was kind of like game. And they had outer game, which is where you dress up like a pirate almost and go up and talk to a group of women and read these canned lines. And that sounded, one, exhausting, because I wanted a long-term relationship, not just to sleep around. And if you have a long-term relationship and you're dressed as a pirate with an English accent, am I supposed to do that for the rest of my life? No. But then they talked about something called inner game, which was becoming a man who was so confident in himself that naturally attracted women. And so those type of things appealed to me more because, number one, I wanted to be authentic. I didn't want to be someone else. I found it hard enough to be me, then also to create a persona to be them and me. That sounded exhausting. But to be a type of person that naturally attracted women. So I started to listen to those people. And those people suggested, if you really want to work on your inner game, you should check out Tony Robbins. So I checked out Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins, like, if you really want to take your spirituality to the next step, you should check out Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra. And I checked out Wayne Dyer and Deepak Chopra. And Wayne Dyer and Deepak, you should check out The Secret. And so I checked out The Secret. And that just spawned in this explosion of going to seminars to start working on myself, learning about neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and all those things to work on myself. And so, yeah, it all started with the same thing, why most guys do anything, just because we want a woman.
Well, that makes perfect sense. It wasn't the answer I was expecting, but it sounds right. So what inspired you to write your book?
Basically, I really wanted to get my thoughts and ideas out there. A lot of times when you're into personal development and growth and you start growing yourself, you really want to tell people. There's just this desire to tell people and help as many people as you can, because the way I was before was tiring. It was scary all the time. Just, it was constant fear and just constant self-talk. And being able to free myself from that was amazing. I loved who I was after that. Even my darkest days after I started to grow were better than my brightest before. And I wanted to share that. And at the time, I really used intentions. And I wanted to create a book on how to write intentions and how to help people kind of create what they want in their life so they could feel the freedom that I was having. Plus, I wanted to share part of myself with the world. And one way to really solidify yourself as a person who gives is to write a book. And it was a long, arduous process. Took me 3 years to write it, 2.5 years, about 2 years until I finally hired a book writing coach to get me over the edge. And then releasing it was a huge ordeal. Self-publishing is easier now than it's ever been, but it's still hard if you want to make a good quality book. It's still a lot of work, and it was worth it. I am proud of what I accomplished with writing my book. The people who read it enjoy it. Joyous Expansion, Unleashing Your Passions to Lead an Inspired Life is the name. And yeah, it was just a wonderful process. And I think almost everybody has a book within them. It's really important, I think, to really solidify that aspect of it. And if you are thinking of writing a book, I highly suggest it because it's a fun process and you learn a lot about yourself and grow as well.
Yes, in this day and age, it seems like everybody could write a book, which, that's something that's different than, in the past. About our communication within our world is more like that today, you don't have to try out to be on a TV show. You can just make one. So.
Oh yeah, with CreateSpace on Amazon, you could write a book today, create a generic cover, and have somebody able to buy it print on demand. If you want to go that route, that's available to you. The technology and information that we've had now astounds me. How, like, listening to the stories of people through the 80s who started, what they had to do was go to a store and spend $200 on a big thing that was that big, bigger, probably the size of my entire head, and it would be a bunch of books on tape with a workbook, and it would be lucky to cost $200, and they would have to listen through all them. Nowadays, you can just buy something online, or plenty of people are giving out amazing talks on YouTube. I think like TED Talks on YouTube, like being able to listen to Brene Brown or that Stroke of Insight. I still think it's one of the best things I've ever listened to. And that's just readily available. You have 1,000 years of Buddhist wisdom available on a click of a button. And just now we have that information. And it's our choice of what we do with it. And my life is better when I do good things with it than if I do doom scrolling on Twitter or something like that.
So what made you decide to start doing podcasts, and kind of also tell the audience what your podcasts are and what each of them is about?
So basically, I've always had the idea of doing a podcast, but just like everything else in my life, I wait until after it gets super popular to get started. But I thought about doing a podcast. I really wanted to do something where I get to interview people and have people tell their stories. I believe stories are the most important part of marketing, period. You listen to the story of how something was created. I mean, heck, I've learned since I was a kid the story of Ford and how they started to mechanize and how we wanted to bring cars to everyone. And that's a great story. And that makes me want to buy a Ford more. And I think sometimes people, especially in our industry, try to talk too much about what they do and what they provide rather than telling the story of who they are. And I just find that compelling. Plus inspiring as somebody who's probably like 10 years of my life been trying to go for it and create a career out of this and haven't gotten exactly the success I wanted. Hearing other people's stories who've also struggled and how they persevered is very inspiring to me. So I also wanted to be inspired by the people. And I've done over 90 interviews so far for my Joyous Expansion podcast. And each story is completely different because the thing I've learned is everybody has a story within them. Everybody's life is significant and they've been through something. I've talked to people who started out so privileged. They had the perfect marriage, the white picket fence, the 2.3 kids, the dog. And then all of a sudden they're like, this is just the life my parents wanted. This is not what I wanted. And they're able to create their life, the Disney princess syndrome, if you will. And that's still inspiring because they got to become authentic. And then you talk to the people who you have no idea that they were crack addicts. I'm like, wow, I've been following you for years and you were a drug addict. One person was involved in being sex trafficked and had a pimp and in porn.
Oh,
and she's an amazing yoga instructor now. I had no idea. And now she preaches positivity and listening how she got through that. And I think just listening to the story of like, that person went through so much, I can get through whatever I'm going through now. And I think that's important to share. The Church of Awesome is a little different. That is more of kind of like my book of giving my thoughts, my ideas out there. I've been going to meditations for a while. I like group meditations because just being surrounded by so many positive people in that positive space really energizes me. And one of my favorite is a cacao ceremony, which is basically chocolate, but not like just pure sacred chocolate. And one of the beauties of cacao is that it's a heart opener. It both causes your blood vessels to expand as well as increase blood pressure. So you're getting just a lot more oxygenated blood, and it's just an amazing feeling. And like half the time there, I would just always get this idea pop in my head, almost a download, if you will, of creating this idea of the Church of Awesome, a church that is designed to help people live their, basically your higher self. Who you desire to be is your God. That's the person you try to become. So all the sermons, all the things become the idea of becoming your best self. And that's what the Church of Awesome is all about, is working on becoming your best self. And someday, especially when all this COVID stuff is over, I plan on start renting a place out and holding sermons and ceremonies and really help people, including myself, live our best life and to be awesome. And those are my 2 podcasts on my 2 podcast network.
Yeah. So I listened to one of your podcasts that you were talking about going around and going to different places looking for that kind of spiritual community. Like one of the places you had gone was the Center for Spiritual Living, and I enjoyed your perspectives in that podcast. It was interesting. So what you mentioned that you haven't really achieved the success that you're looking for. So what keeps you motivated, and what is that end goal of success that you aspire to?
Well, my end goal of success is this is where I make my income, that I derive income by making people's lives more happy and filled with more joy and living the lives they want. And unfortunately, that has not happened yet. But the reason I keep on going is the recognition that this is what I love. This is my passion. And I truly thought about it. One problem with our country, I think this is a USA idea, is that if you do all the right things, you're guaranteed success. And that's not the case. There's a lot of people who worked really hard and were really talented, but they just didn't make it for one reason or another. I just had an interview with somebody who made it as he works for the Miami Dolphins, and he's started off as someone on a message board and then did so many things, and he made it, and it's great. But there's also stories of hundreds of people who don't make it, and we generally don't tell those people's stories. Don't tell the stories of the people who worked their butt off, who are talented, who didn't make it. So the question I had for myself, if I am going to be one of those people, that is a possibility. The possibility that I work my butt off, that I become even a better speaker, that I create more good content, and this is still a hobby my entire life. What's important when I look back at the end of my life? Is it important to me to think to myself, well, I got a job that I was mediocre with all my life, or I went for it on my passion? And the thing that's more important to me is going for it on my passion.
Okay, great. Awesome. Yes. That is actually, you defined what my podcast is about. People pursuing their passions and the wisdom gained. So what I would say is that it kind of depends on how we define success, because you can not be financially successful and still be successful. You know, we sort of define it that way, but there's plenty of people who did not do well financially in their lifetime that are famous for the body of work that they left as their legacy. So
Well, that is a good point, but I would still like to enjoy it. I'm sure Vincent van Gogh
yeah, I think
would have
we all do.
preferred to be able to sell more than one of his paintings when he was alive.
Yes, I think we all do want to achieve that, both of those things, financial success and being recognized maybe for what we do. We don't all define it the same way, because some people want, like fame and notoriety, and other people are satisfied just to know that they're doing, good in the world and people are benefiting.
Oh
So do
yeah,
you want
listening to people talk to me and said what you've said really touched me. That has been extremely. It's one of the things that's fed me. I have touched people's lives. I've had to improve them. The speeches I give at Toastmasters have touched people. The speeches that I've given other places, people like them. I've had people tell me about, they're listening to my podcast and they're being inspired. And yeah, I don't have the 1,000 or so listeners, but the people who are listening are gaining benefit. And that does help push forward, because you're screaming into an empty hall. It just doesn't feel as good. But if there's one person there receiving, that's one life you're changing. And I know that I am at least changing one life. And sometimes that's what you have to grab onto in this world, because, generally speaking, people don't talk to you unless you make them angry, especially online. And so you just have to keep at it and believe that you are making a difference. And once in a blue moon, someone will finally come up to you and say, thank you. This thing that you did helped me somehow. This thing that you did made my life more positive. I remember having a conversation with my mom about 6 months ago about how something had been harping on her for a while, and how she finally put it into effect, and how it's just like she doesn't have that helped her. And so a lot of times it's the little touches as well. I know this idea that we have to make a big impact to be relevant or something isn't true. And so just concentrating on those little pebbles that cause big ripples eventually. And
Yes.
so being positive and sending it. Plus, it's a way to radiate love into the world and bring more love into the world. And I think that's needed. It's always been needed. I know people like to talk about how life is worse now, but no, there are many worse times.
There's some circumstances now that, are pretty horrific, but there is also, I think, more enlightenment and more, like there are so many coaches, and every client that I work with and they make a big transformation, then they want to go and help other people. And that's fantastic, because it is kind of like a ripple effect.
Yeah, that's what the basis of, I think, Joyous Expansion is. That's why I imagine it. I radiate joy, I radiate love, and I notice that there are people in my life who able to live with a little bit more joy because of the work that I did, and then people in their life, and then that spreads. And I think, that's to me the basis of Joyous Expansion, just spreading that joy across the world. If we all live in a way that tries to spread more joy, just imagine what a wonderful world we live in.
Exactly. So I think we're going in the right direction. I just wish we were going faster, but we can't control that.
We live in interesting times for sure. There are scary parts of life, but we also have to look at some of the basic things that are amazing. Yes, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but last time we were in the middle of a pandemic, most people didn't even believe in germs. And then the most famous pandemic that we have, the Black Plague, which killed 1/3 of the population, there was also a good chance that you could be farming one day and a big group of people would come and burn all your stuff down and kill everybody. That does not happen often in Renton. That's not like, we don't have roving band of raiders and Vikings and stuff like that. And so while, yes, we have a lot of modern problems, we also have a lot of modern solutions that have make the world better. And we do have a chance to elevate humanity. And that's going to be up to not us individually making a good change, and as well as working on us individually making sure our leaders do as well. And to really work on that, work on ourselves, and then work on our community, and hopefully get that to bubble up to the top so we can change our society from one based on fear and lack and greed to one on abundance and love and generosity that human beings are very capable of. And that's why we are the dominant species on this planet, not because we're greedy. It's because we're so good at sharing and so good at taking care of each other and so intelligent that we're able to create so many amazing things. I mean, this is just so many electrical explaining how this is happening, and you can see my face right now, would take so freaking long, and it's amazing. And this is something that we as a collective have created, and we have the ability to do better. As long as we keep on trying to do better, I think we as a society will figure it out.
As a world, I think we need to figure it out. And as I said, I think we're going in that direction. So,
oh yeah, I see a lot of positivity and good. We have a good chance.
So, what has been your biggest challenge in what you're trying to create, and what has been your biggest challenge once you got over the fear, or at least knew that you needed to get over the fear? What has been the biggest challenge?
My biggest challenge has been consistency. I would create this big vision for myself. I would work really hard at it. I'd want all these things to happen, and then they didn't happen the way I want, and then I'd quit. And so doing that for about 5 to 10 years. I mean, I was creating YouTube videos back when if you just created a video, you get 600 or so views, because just there weren't as many videos on there. But then I quit because things weren't going the way I wanted. Or same with like Facebook pages and things of that nature, or even my book, going out there and working really hard and then having no one show up for a book signing or something like that. Just that happening. And it's one thing actually starting this podcast. I got to episode 10 before I stopped for months, and I didn't have any guest or anything for a while, and it was just hard. And then I had to make that choice. Do I really want to continue this? Well, what do I want this to be? I want this to prove to myself that I can be consistent, that I can push through those times. And even though my views aren't what I want them to be, I can be consistent, and I can prove to myself that I can do it. And I think that's one of the most important things of becoming successful is consistency. If you consistently do, I kind of believe that, you create your own luck, in the sense of if you continue to put yourself out there and you continue to work on your craft and you continue to push for it, your chances for success increase exponentially. But if you keep on stop starting, you're really lessening your chance to get that lucky break, to talk to that right person that brings you to that right person, and it allows you to build. And so that's one thing I've been working on, especially with my podcast, is consistency. One thing I've always tried to do with anything I do, everything I put out there, is to make it something that, of course, everyone always says that, and something I found true for my life is what you create, what you teach, what you coach on is what you need to work on yourself. Yes. Which makes sense, because that's how you know how to help other people, because you can relate.
Yes, exactly. So, what has surprised you most about life so far?
What has surprised me most about life?
Yes.
How how chaotic it is. It's just so not what you think it's going to be, and how just things just happen, and how you never, those things in life that you think you know and you think you understand, you don't really understand that. And that thing that you worked on your entire life, and you're like, I am over that. And then the perfect thing will come and trigger. And all of a sudden it's like, I thought I fixed that. And so it's just how life is, just, I guess, just the isness of it. I guess not chaotic. It's just, it is what it is, if you will, has been the most surprising thing about life. It's just so, it's just been so just so being. And you can control certain parts of it, but there'll always be something out of your control. And it's a balance between what you can control and what you can't. And you get, like serenity prayer, basically. The serenity prayer is by far one of the best pieces of advice that there's out there. Grant me the wisdom to accept the things I cannot change and ignore and let go of the things I can't. If I said that correctly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got the gist of it.
Yeah.
Not exactly the wording, but yeah. So yeah, that is very true. And, I've learned that a few times. When I first went to my coaching to do my coaching certification, I thought, I need this certification. But, I had the attitude that I had already done all the work. I had solved all my problems. I was good. And then I went to 3 weeks of the coaching certification and learning all of that stuff. And it was in Sedona, and Sedona is, I don't know, I think the vortexes and everything, it brings up emotional stuff that, you didn't know was there. And I found out pretty quick that I hadn't done all the work, that there was more. And that not only that there would always be more.
Yeah, it's never ending. There's always some part of your psyche that you need to work on. And that's been a huge surprise, especially when I first started. I had the same kind of experience, but it was only like 2 years in. I went to a meditation. I thought it was a enlightenment intensive, and I thought I was going to do very easy about it because I just spent 2 years listening to Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. I got this in the bag, and just seeing how funny those thoughts were.
Yes.
How little I know about myself even at that time, and I thought I knew so much only because But there's always a tip of the iceberg, and just when you go deeper, there's always more. And a lot of things that you think you've finished in the past will come up again because we're human. We make the same mistake over and over again. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just when we get the tools, the thing that I learned most about personal development is it does not solve all your problems. It's like that old saying about enlightenment. Before enlightenment, you carry water, you sweep the floor. After enlightenment, you carry water and sweep the floor. Because we think this is going to change everything, and it does. But we think it's going to solve everything. Enlightenment, NLP, all this stuff. And we're going to have no problems, sail through life, and it's just going to be easy. But then but what happens isn't that it's easy. What happens is now you have tools to work with when that stuff comes up again. You have a way to get through that when your loved one comes at you in a way that triggers you by something your mom said when you were 5 years old. Instead of screaming and yelling and or you screamed and yelled and you stormed out of the room, and then you recognize, wait, I was wrong. And you can come in and say, let's talk about this. Let's focus, we could do this. And so basically it just gives you the tools to work on it when you are triggered, when you do make mistakes, when the thing comes up again, when a new thing comes up. And I think that's one of the beauties of personal development is getting those tools to help you survive this chaotic, interesting world that we live in.
Yes. And, that it's that journey of learning and growing that, really is life. I mean, without it, if you solved all the problems and, there weren't any more obstacles or bumps in the road, what would it be? I mean, you wouldn't get that, satisfaction of learning and solving and growing. And that turns out to be the best part of things.
Yeah. A lot of us think that we could spend the rest of our lives in a beach sipping Mai Tais and doing nothing. But human beings, we like to accomplish things. We like to believe we like to work on our life in a purposeful way. And thus we have to continue. So in a way, it is a good thing that we can't solve everything, because life would be weird if we could. But at the same time, it is surprising.
And kind of boring. That's what you hear, people that have everything and, everything that they could desire, or if they don't have it, they could buy it. They aren't happy. That one thing that they can't buy or acquire, or
Oh yeah. So if you want to talk about
because
something else that made me super surprised was that once money becomes not a stress, more of it doesn't make you happy.
Yes, and it's not the acquisition of things, it's the process, that is really what is satisfying, or gives us, I don't even know what to call it, because happiness encompasses, too many feelings.
True. Oh, it's also the memories that we make along the way. I've seen, one thing you do is you watch studies on happiness and joy, and they say buying an expensive dinner for your family brings you more long-term happiness than buying an expensive item. And at the time when I read that, I was really young, in my 20s, and that didn't make any sense to me. I could watch you can see my big screen TV back there. I can watch that every day. That makes me filled with joy. But it's just that camaraderie that you have with your family, and that memory of going out and having a good time. And you're thinking back on that, it's like, oh, remember that one time you went to the crab pot with your aunt and you guys ate all those crabs and you had that wonderful conversation. It's just bringing that up just fills me up with joy and love. And that's worth more than that big screen TV back there. And that's just the way it is. It's just one of the we as human beings, we are we're social creatures. And the more we love and the more we bring love in our lives with people, the more we can share that. The memories that we create are worth more than the stuff we buy. And no matter how many things you buy, if you don't have that, you'll always feel kind of empty, even if the stuff is super fun. And so I do truly believe creating meaningful relationships, whatever that means. For some people, it's thousands of people. For some people, it's just one or two good friends. I'm not saying one is not worse than the other. Yeah, everyone's different. I mean, that's one of the weirdest parts about being human, is how different we are of what makes us feel joy. But really embracing that aspect of life is something that helps us become more satisfied.
Yes. And experiences, even if they aren't with other people. If you, like, say you're having your birthday and there's nobody else around, if you go and treat yourself to, some experience, something that you've always wanted to do, that's probably going to be more fulfilling than if you, buy yourself something.
Yeah. The experiences, the memories, that's what life is all about. I mean, things are nice, but the more we can experience, I think the better. And that's one thing I want to help people do is enjoy their experiences more. And that's one thing that personal development, growth, working with coaches, listening to podcasts, being able to remove those blocks to enjoying the experience at that time, getting out of your head. So you're not thinking about the past. You're able to be in the present and enjoying that thing you want to do, that cake you always wanted to try, that botanical garden you've always wanted to go to, and truly being there and being in that experience and feeling the joy of that moment. I think that's another benefit of the people like us bring to this world, is allow people to enjoy those experiences more because they're able to focus on what they love more out of life than the pain.
So who are your clients? What type of people and problems do you work with?
Mostly social anxiety. As somebody who used to have crippling social anxiety, I have a way to really empathize with people with social anxiety and to talk to them in a way of understanding. If you've never had social anxiety, it's hard to understand. And that's one thing people with social anxiety want, is empathy for that, because people without it don't know why you are so afraid just to go over and talk to somebody or have a conversation, or how you can think about that conversation every day for 3 years of why you said you wanted more ice cream when you didn't want more ice cream, but you didn't want to make the person upset. And you're like, why did I eat all that ice cream? And that stays. So being able to work with those people and help them through that. I just have a really good way of talking to people with that and allow them to live a more joy and happy life.
Okay. Well, we are getting close to the end of our time. So I have one more question, and that would be if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
Do something in the next week that will give you a happy and joy-filled experience. Send somebody a love note that you care about them. Go eat that cake you want to eat that you've been putting off. Do something that makes you happy for you.
Okay, great. So if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You can go to joyousexpansion.com. That's my website. Pod.joyousexpansion.com is a good way to find my Joyous Expansion podcast. You put my name in Google. I totally dominate all other Brett Duprees out there when it comes to SEO.
Okay. Well, I found you easy enough on Facebook. So, yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being here today and, telling us about your experience and why you do what you do. I think it's very needed.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been my pleasure.
Okay. Well, we have another great show planned for next week. If you've been following the podcast, you might remember that Frank King didn't show up for the podcast on suicide prevention awareness. And I caught up with him, and he's going to be on next week, and I'll let him explain why he didn't show up. I'm not sure if, the dog ate his homework or it was a bush that stole his phone or what, but we'll hear what happened. And Frank is an expert in the suicide prevention area. So be sure to tune in next Tuesday, which is the 13th, 10/13. And I have a quote for you to carry with you through your week. And Brett, brought this up a little earlier in the podcast. So one of the greatest discoveries a man makes, and one of his great surprises, is to find that he can do what he was afraid he could not do. And that was said by Henry Ford. So have a great week. I'm just going to say bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.